got into legal technology back in 2005 with eDiscovery. Got into technology back in 1996 and had an opportunity to be involved in the PC wave, personal computing with Compaq Computer Corporation. Migrated into storage area networking in the early 2000s. And as a natural career progression, had an opportunity to start working some compliance projects and back then discovery projects. And since that time, have been in the industry, worked with a variety of companies, I think 6 or 7, in a variety of roles from traditional product development, product management, all the way through product marketing and chief marketing officer. But a majority of the work from a technologist perspective and from a marketing perspective have been on that legal discovery piece, the conventional EDRM tasks.
You started a blog. What year did you start your blog?
I think it was around 2007, and it was actually, it's interesting, it was kind of a labor of love for a couple of reasons. One, it provided a repository for things that I found important in my job. But secondly, back in 2003, when blogging was just starting to take off, had an opportunity to attend the first BloggerCon at Harvard. And in fact, Bob Ambrosi was there, and I know Greg knows Bob. So just something I continued, had a variety of blogs before that time, but in 2007 started one strictly focused on eDiscovery. And even though it encompasses a lot of eDiscovery information, really the center of gravity of it is information that would be beneficial for those considering eDiscovery technology providers and the providers themselves as they were seeking to understand the market that they were solving problems for. So I think the 3 most popular areas per se are annually do some market sizing information, which is more of a, I call it a mashup, but it's an aggregate of approximately 30 plus research pieces over time, and every year it grows, based on the model. But publish that, and it defines kind of an estimation of software market and services market and an aggregate market for the eDiscovery arena. Another one is kind of interesting is a quarterly survey, business confidence survey, and it's nothing more than a simple 8 or 9 question survey that goes out to legal professionals, kind of taking a pulse on how they feel the economics of the industry are. And then last but not least, it just really serves as a repository of relevant information or information that's in the news, everything from artificial intelligence to blockchain to communications technologies that I find interesting. Part of my blog is aggregation, being finding great stories in the industry, posting them on the blog, and then I see Twitter, LinkedIn, Google Plus. To me, they're an extension of the blog where I may not necessarily have time to comment or do a full post, but I still point to the stuff. So a day for me starts very, very early in the morning, and spend about an hour or 2 really just reading industry news. A lot of those blogs that I shared with you, and seeing what's relevant in the industry. And then doing posting. We use a lot of the different tools from a social media perspective. The second part of that is the writing piece of it. And that's usually based on an activity or an event that's important to me. A lot of it is the research, where there's an annual cycle for market sizing. There's a quarterly cycle for business confidence. There's a as it happens cycle for eDiscovery mergers and acquisitions. But there's also a part I don't talk about as much, but it's just as fulfilling, the ability to write about some challenges, communication challenges in the marketplace today. And one of the challenges I find in the market, especially in businesses, people will share with you an idea or a concept, and they present it as a fact or as truth, but in reality it hasn't gone through the opinion, preference, fact, or absolute filter. And it's tough to explain those kind of 4 levels when you're in the middle of a discussion, because you don't want to come across as questioning somebody in a manner that they don't feel it's questioning to understand, but it's questioning them. So I also use, from a writing perspective, an opportunity to articulate a lot of those thoughts. So it's easy to educate folks up front that I'm working with. Look, this is a way that I tend to look at these things, and if you break these down. So when we're discussing, if I'm questioning, it's to learn, and if I say something's an opinion, this is what I mean by that. But I use it as kind of a tool for that also. So for me, it will continue, but I will say absolutely use it daily in the work that I do, both from a research perspective and from a looking back into the market, based on the fact that history tends to repeat itself. I will say that the mergers and acquisitions are really salient in the space right now, based on the many investments in acquisitions and mergers that are going on in the space. And I think it's just, to me, it's fascinating, and actually having a chance to participate in some of those as member of organizations that have been on both sides of that. It's just fascinating to see the reasons for that. On one end of the spectrum, it's, the acquisition of revenue opportunities. I mean, ultimately you're creating value. And then on the other side, the taking of technologies and reinvigorating them in order to create value. I'd say, the pulse rate for acquisitions and mergers is definitely increasing. And also the size of the players, involved in that. So, there's been talk over the years about compression of the market, and I think that, we're seeing a little bit of that acted out in the mergers and acquisitions. I have a great opportunity to work for a company called Haystack, headquartered in Boston. Did some excellent acquisitions earlier in the year. Certainly, both from a personal perspective and a business perspective, it's fun to watch. They're a specialized eDiscovery services provider, and they're really unique in the fact that they have an incredibly strong forensics focus at the front end of their practice, and on the back end of their practice has some unique technology called ReviewRite, which is a brand, it's a set of offerings, and it's actually an application. So having an opportunity to work with them, full service provider, and looking for some exciting things, from them from a marketing perspective. We had an opportunity to do some brand refresh and some messaging update, which is taking, the genesis of already a great company and doing some updates that were necessary as part of, combining additional companies. And we've had a chance to roll that out to market over the last month. So a very exciting time from a marketing perspective, but also from ultimately a company is only as good as its ability to solve problems. And the great thing about Haystack is that it's really helping law firms, corporations, government entities solve some of the true challenges that they face. You asked me about the business confidence survey. If you look at the market through the lens of the problems that people are seeing, budgetary constraints, increasing volumes of data, increasing formats of data, Haystack is very well positioned with internal expertise and technology to address those. So definitely exuberant, as I hope comes across about the company, but it's well founded because it's an excellent company in a great position to help important companies solve problems.
What's a product that you see out there that's very interesting right now that's coming up, that you're about to explore or want to explore?
I tell you what's interesting, even beyond the eDiscovery piece, and I appreciate y'all asking that, on a personal productivity level, some of the artificial intelligence that's built into Google from their email perspective. And it's just fascinating to see the learning associated with that, and how now, after using it for several months, I can start an email and it can complete a long train of thought, which from a personal productivity perspective is interesting. But it also triggers in my mind, how do you deal with that from a discovery perspective when somebody enters, they're thinking they're entering one thing, they're not going back and proofing what they write, and the artificial intelligence is filling something in based on previous patterns. So, kind of a fascinating thought there, but in answer to your question, that AI piece is kind of interesting to me. Amazon, they've got their Poly application now that in fact on my blog, every single blog post, it automatically takes it, puts it into spoken text. even down to the point, Angela, where you can click a box whether there's breaths between words or not. I mean, it's just really, really fascinating to understand that it's a complicated industry with a lot of nuances. And your competitor can also be your partner, and your partner can also be your competitor. So, you know, there's a lot of nuances. So I would just say that, you know, while there's plenty of opportunity, one needs to be intellectually honest enough to realize there's a lot that one may not know. There's not a lot of absolutes where, you know, I shared with you that thought process, you know. There's a lot of opinions and preferences. But for marketers that have an understanding of technology, that have an understanding, a basic understanding of legal technology and the eDiscovery process, I think there are plenty of opportunities. Why? Because there's plenty of problems in communicating the problems people are trying to solve, and marketing tends to fit that communication role.